So obviously I wanted to start talking about this hotline with Fender. I would love to hear a little bit about where this idea came from and everything going into it.
Well, I can't really take credit for the concept of it. So I don't particularly want to, but I really liked the idea of I like any opportunity to get to talk to anybody who's like interested specifically in making music and I don't know, like I feel like I benefited so much from like the internet as a resource in learning how to play instruments. And I think like anything I can do to sort of like be accessible and offer advice and anything I've learned to young people is like, I benefited from it so much. So it just seems like the right thing to do. And the Acoustasonic specifically is like a guitar that I have found like a lot of use for, and just something like I'm genuinely passionate about. And so I was really excited about doing with this instrument, and like one that I don't know, like we've gotten to use it in a lot of areas. The sort of like biggest one is that I play a lot of acoustic guitar in Billie's live show, and she plays like arenas. And usually that means that like having like just the sound hole on an acoustic guitar open makes the guitar too resonant. It gets really buzzy. And so you have to like mute the sound hole anyway. And I found that like the Acoustasonic is like essentially feedbackless, which is like the dream of an acoustic guitar live. And it sounds just as good. So like I've been playing an Acoustasonic live since they came out. I just was like, this is the coolest. And you can kind of rock out with it in a way where like a big thick acoustic guitar, as much as I love it, you can't rock out as hard with that and with the Sonic. And so I was kind of, you can rock out like you're playing an electric guitar, which I like.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. We always want to be able to rock out. Can you give us a little example of what that sounds like? I see you have your guitar there.
I do, but it's unplugged.
Oh.
It's not plugged in. So that's how it's
our beautiful prop for the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's at its best, obviously like amplified. And the cool thing is that it's got like the tone switch between like full clean and full dirty. You can blend the two. And then also what they've done such a good job with is you don't have to run it through any pedals to get that nice kind of crunchy electric sound out of the dirty setting. It's just kind of automatically that way. I could, you know what? I bet I could.
Yeah, if you want to.
That's what I bet. I have cables. I'm in my studio. I have resources. But it's one of those things where like, I don't know where this, we'll see how this goes. You have to charge these things. I may not have it charged. This is the
I'm learning so much. My degree has music in the name, but look I'm already getting such an education.
Let's see. Oh yes, it's dead. So
that's all right. I appreciate you trying. It looks lovely regardless, but I love that you mentioned that the internet was such a resource to you growing up. And I know you were raised by musicians and you have this wonderful, rich musical history. And what would you say are some of the instruments that you were most drawn to growing up? And what was that kind of part of your musical journey like very, very young? Were you gravitating towards the guitar? Did you love sitting down at a piano? What was your earliest?
First thing I started playing was piano. My parents both play a little bit, and we had an old like my grandpa's piano in the house, and so that was like available to me. And I took some music lessons as a little kid and hated it because they were teaching like scales and stuff that isn't interesting as a kid. But then I remember loving some pop song and my dad being like, it's only a couple chords, like I can teach it to you really easily if you want. And then once you know a couple chords, you can play about 600 million pop songs, which is exciting. And then kind of the same deal with guitar, just like learned a couple chords, learned how to play a couple songs. I think the first two chords I learned on guitar were C and E minor, which was Eleanor Rigby, which is like, Eleanor Rigby has all that cool arpeggiation, but underneath all of it, it's basically just like those two chords and like an A. Anyway, so those were the first two instruments, and that was kind of all I knew how to play through like high school basically. But when I want to say like 13 or 14, I got Logic Pro on my computer, and the price had gone down, which is why I could afford it. I'd been saving up for it, and they like lowered the price. And I started to like love music production, and recorded, terrible little demos and stuff. And I didn't really make anything that I thought sounded good at all for probably, 5 years. Like it was about 5 years of like making stuff all the time and thinking it was all really bad. And then when I was like 18, I made Ocean Eyes for my sister. And I remember being like, this is good. But that was the first thing after like many years of really bad stuff.
I think that'll honestly be really encouraging for people to hear that, like anything else, that's part of the process, and it's not going to sound great right off the bat. So
No.
Do you think that your writing journey kind of followed that same path of just kind of trial and error and figuring out your own voice? What was that like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I started writing songs when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And the thing I always joke about is like, although I listen back to them and I don't think any of them are very good, especially from that age, they were always like very structurally sound.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like I always was paying a lot of attention to like rhyme schemes, and here's a verse and here's a chorus and here's a verse. So even though like the kind of meat and potatoes of it, I don't think are worth listening to ever, like that was my focus early on, was like making sure it always rhymed, making sure the chorus sounded like a chorus and the verses sounded like verses. And so that was sort of like the first thing I could do, even though I couldn't yet write a good song.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Ocean Eyes is kind of a turning point, and working with friends is difficult enough. Working with family can be even harder, but obviously you and Billie have proven yourselves as a great creative team. So what do you think are some of the things that are on that foundation that allow you guys to create so well together?
Well, she's incredibly talented and, a great artist. And that makes me feel lucky to work with her. But in terms of our sort of relationship with each other, I think being siblings and having that kind of foundation of unconditional love underneath everything means that you can argue about something very freely. And I think like even with my best friends, I've never been very comfortable saying something that I worry might offend them. Mm-hmm. And even down to like Billie doing a take and me going like, I think that's good, but I think you can do a better take. And that's kind of your job as a music producer. So to me, like someone like Billie, or like, maybe a better example, because I'm comfortable doing that with singers, because, I think it's always important to push people, I guess, to like do the best they can do. But, oftentimes as a producer, you do something and the artist goes like, I don't really like it. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it is the artist's product, but like sometimes your opinion is different on a different day, and you come back and listen to something 2 days later and you're like, I actually kind of like it. And with Billie, it's always been nice because I feel like she's not scared of me at all. I think sometimes artists, I certainly was with producers I worked with when I was younger, I was very intimidated by them. And if they said it should be one way, I'd be like, okay. And I think Billie is not intimidated by me at all. And I think that allows her to just be really authentic. And if I go like, let's try this way, and she goes, I don't want to do that, it's great. It saves a lot of time. It makes the product better. I was saying to a friend of mine the other day that like, we don't compromise a lot. We're sort of big believers in like winning, and but like best, like the idea of winning. And I think that's because like, I don't usually like the sound of compromise as much as I like the sound of an idea, even if it's the idea I didn't want. Mm-hmm. If someone thinks it should be this way and someone thinks it should be this way, I don't usually think this is the best version. I think like one of these two is the best. So I think that's like the main reason why working with Billie is so fun for me. Yeah.
And just that open dialogue that allows you guys to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this week, of course, is release week. Can you tell us anything as we're heading in? I know we've got some talk of jazz influences, which I'm very curious about. So we're just excited to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming. We started this album like the first or second week of lockdown of last year, probably finished it up in February of this year. We love this album and we're so proud of it. And I think this album in many ways is like a coming of age record for Billie, and she's so wildly honest and like vulnerable on the album, and that's you know, in addition to sort of like the cool beats and the cool production, like the things that I'm excited about are just like where she went emotionally on this album and like how transparent she got.
Yeah, to kind of circle back, I am just curious from an artist perspective. Something I've been asking a lot of folks lately as the past year has just been what it's been. I'm curious what you have felt inspired by, and thematically, just as an artist, what you've been consuming and what you feel like you've really been digging into, whether that's other music or TV or film. What has been really life-giving for you lately?
Good question. I think especially the stuff that I have a new album that I've been working on, but the stuff that I put out over the course of 2020 and into 2021 felt very reflective of just sort of me absorbing like the world around me and stuff. There were singles like Can't Wait to Be Dead and Where the Poison Is that were sort of like direct results of me kind of like
Right.
mirroring current events and stuff like that. And you know, I think like those songs I'm proud of those, and they were important to me because I think music's like always how I've like really processed my articulation of stuff internally. It's how I've like expressed how I'm feeling the sort of most concisely. So I guess it has been a very inspiring year culturally, to say the least. And then you know, beyond that, like the things I draw inspiration from are like my relationship with Claudia, and my relationship with my family, and my relationship with my friends. And you know, to me, that's the articulation of the human condition, and there isn't a more sort of like universal theme than those things. Even if you feel like something happening in your relationship is so unique to your relationship, you put it in a song and you know, somebody texts you and goes like, that's exactly how I felt 2 weeks ago, and you're like, oh, that's great. Humans are very similar.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to kind of circle back once again, to kind of where we started with the Fender initiative, I know you mentioned that in a previous discussion, I think you mentioned nothing music related is off limits. So what are some of the things that you're most excited to share with people, whether that be instruments and some of the insight that you mentioned with your guitar, or sound, production, you know, logic hacks? What are you most excited to impart on this next generation of curious producers?
In terms of like kids asking?
Yeah, yeah. And I hope that it's, you know, like kids, teens. I hope it's just across the spectrum. I'm so excited to kind of see the musical creativity that comes out of this.
Good question. I mean, I'll answer whatever anybody wants me to, you know, answer in these cases, permitting it's sort of essentially music related.
Topic, yeah.
You know, I think to me, like in the realm of advice, unless it's a specific, like unless some kid is like, what compressor do you use? And then I just tell them. If it's a kind of like, I try to keep, there's like not a right way or a wrong way to like have a career in music. And I try to just sort of keep my encouragement as kind of like, not like, I don't want to use the word vague, but like unspecific as possible, because if there was a right way to like make it, so to speak, like there'd be a line around the block. Like there's not really a right way, and I kind of wish there was, and I'm kind of glad there isn't, because it just means you can be creative and you don't have to worry about doing something wrong. But yeah, I mean, I think that's like, you know, in terms of what I'm the most excited about, I think the thing I'm always the most excited about, just as a fan of music, is hearing the music that young people are making. That's like super exciting to me. I mean, I just like yesterday, the day before, I heard that Cheap Flowers song by Lexi Jade, and I think she's like 18 years old, and I loved it, and it reminded me of like the music I was listening to in the early 2000s. It was like really exciting to me. So yeah. I think like at the end of the day, selfishly, I'll always just be the most excited to hear really good music.
If you could put yourself back into that early 2000s FINNEAS' shoes, if there had been a hotline like this, who would you have been like most excited to call up? Who was the artist where you would have been like, they have to answer my question?
And I probably would have been like genuinely too nervous, but like when I was 11 and 12, I was a huge Green Day fan. So probably like Billie Joe Armstrong, but I would have been floored to be talking. I wouldn't have been able to cope very well. So it's probably for the best that I did. Billie Joe Armstrong. Ben Folds is a huge inspiration of mine. He's an amazing songwriter and a great pianist. Chris Martin, huge inspiration to me. Yeah, I mean, one of those three guys, maybe like Sarah Bareilles, Imogen Heap, also huge fan of the two of them.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Is there anything immediately coming up that you're super excited about? Anything else you want to touch on that we haven't talked about yet?
I got a lot of music coming out. On this day, I'm not at liberty to say much more, but I got a lot of music coming out super soon. I'm really excited for people to hear it. And man, I hope we get to play some shows soon. I hope it all happens.
Dude, that was going to be my next question. If we have anything that you can share at all about where we can see you soon.
I'm playing Bottle Rock in Napa Valley like first weekend of September, and then we have a tour in the works we're announcing really soon.